The kitchen feels safe, the fridge hums softly, bright packaging lines the shelves: cereal, soda, bread, snacks. It looks ordinary, familiar, comforting. But beneath the colors, the mascots, the smile in commercials, lies another truth, a truth of chemicals, deception, and invisible dangers. You don't just eat to survive, you eat what corporations allow. You trust what regulators approve, and you believe what labels promise. That trust is misplaced. Because behind every bite of normal American food is a secret, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is a story of what you really eat in America. Part 1. The Frankenstein ingredients hidden in plain sight. You wake up on a Saturday morning. Sunlight filters through the blinds. The smell of coffee fills the kitchen. On the table, a bright, cheerful box of breakfast cereal. Cartoon mascots smile at you. The label proudly declares, whole grain, low fat. Part of a balanced breakfast. Your child digs in. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It feels normal. Safe, familiar. But hidden inside that bowl is a chemical cocktail that other nations have already outlawed. What you just served isn't food. It's a Frankenstein creation of additives and colorants, an experiment disguised as breakfast. The Red 40 illusion. Let's start with color. Americans are drawn to foods that look alive: neon candy, red yogurts, rainbow cereals. But those colors don't come from fruit or nature. They come from artificial dyes like Red 40, Yellow 5 and Yellow 6 petroleum-based chemicals in Europe. These dyes come with warning labels, may cause hyperactivity in children in some countries. They're outright banned in the United States. They're sprinkled freely into everything from Skittles to mac and cheese. Parents who thought they were giving their children a harmless treat are shocked when studies link these dyes to behavioral issues, allergic reactions, and potential cancer risks. The irony? Natural alternatives exist: beet juice, turmeric, paprika. But they're more expensive, and in the world of processed food, cost beats safety every time. The brominated beverage. It's a hot summer day. You grab an ice-cold soda. Sweet, fizzy, refreshing. But if you check the fine print, you might see an ingredient that sounds more like something from a chemistry lab. Brominated vegetable oil, BVO. What is BVO? A flame retardant chemical, repurposed to keep citrus flavor evenly distributed in soda. The same substance used in plastics and furniture to prevent fires is floating in your Mountain Dew. Animal studies have linked it to thyroid damage, memory loss, and fertility problems. The European Union banned it decades ago, Japan too. But in America, it lingers in soft drinks. Hidden in plain sight, you drink it, your children drink it, and every sip is another roll of the dice, the bread that bites back. Bread is supposed to be simple: flour, water, yeast, salt. But modern American bread is far from simple. One additive stands out: potassium bromate. This chemical is used to strengthen dough, to make loaves fluffier, whiter, and more uniform. But here's the dark truth: potassium bromate is labeled a possible human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. In lab tests, it has caused tumors in rats and kidney damage. The UK banned it in 1990. Canada soon followed. Most of the world rejects it. Yet in the US, it remains legal. You'll find it in sandwich bread, pizza dough, and even pastries sold at supermarkets across the nation. And the cruel twist: the FDA knows, but they also know that regulating it would disrupt billion-dollar industries. So instead, they leave it to voluntary removal by companies. Some brands quietly phase it out. Others continue. You, the consumer, are never told which is which. The cheese that isn't cheese. You sprinkle shredded cheddar on your nachos, melt a slice of American cheese on your burger. But here's the question: how much of that cheese is actually cheese? In many processed varieties, fillers like cellulose would pulp are added to prevent clumping, anti-mold agents, artificial flavors, even coloring agents to fake the authentic yellow-orange hue. Americans associate with cheddar. The final product melts well, tastes consistent, and lasts unnaturally long in your fridge. But at its core, it's more industrial product than dairy. You're not eating cheese, you're eating the illusion of cheese. The silent trade-off: why does the US allow what others reject? The answer is painfully simple: profit and politics. Artificial dyes are cheap, natural ones cost more. BVO keeps soda stable on shelves, saving companies millions. Potassium bromate makes bread fluffier, faster, more profitable. Fake cheese reduces production costs, maximizing margins. Meanwhile, American regulators operate under a twisted philosophy: safe until proven dangerous. In Europe, the model is reversed: ban until proven safe. That single difference explains why the same multinational company sells cleaner versions of their products abroad, while feeding Americans a cheaper, dirtier formula. The family at the table. Picture this: A family sits down for dinner. Mom pulls out a loaf of soft bread. Dad pours orange soda into plastic cups. The kids sprinkle shredded cheese over their pasta. Laughter fills the room. The TV glows in the background. It looks like any other American evening. But under that picture of normalcy is a slow drip of invisible toxins, chemicals that erode health not in days, but in decades. Hyperactivity in children, rising cancer rates, hormonal imbalances, obesity, diabetes, all trace back in part to an industry that put profit above people. The uncomfortable question, so here's the uncomfortable truth. When you eat in America, you're not just eating food. You're eating compromises, shortcuts, chemicals dressed up as flavor, color, and texture. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The cereal in your cupboard, the soda in your fridge, the bread on your counter, the cheese in your sandwich, they're all part of the same system, one that treats you as a test subject, not a customer. And that leads to the real horror. If these are just the ingredients we know about, what's still hiding, waiting to be exposed? Part 2. The meat industry's dark secrets. The grill is smoking. The smell of sizzling burgers fills the air. A backyard party, neighbors laughing, kids running barefoot in the grass, someone holding a red Solo cup. The American dream, wrapped in a sesame seed bun. But behind every juicy burger is a system built not on tradition or quality, but on chemicals, shortcuts, and calculated deception. The meat industry doesn't want you to know how the food on your plate is made, because once you see it, the dream turns into a nightmare. The pink slime line. 2012, a whistleblower revealed the existence of a product the meat industry called lean, finely textured beef. The public knew it by another name, pink slime. It wasn't steak. It wasn't ground chuck. It was leftover scraps, connective tissue, trimmings, parts of the cow never meant to be eaten, treated with ammonia gas to kill bacteria. The result was a pink paste, folded back into ground beef, hidden inside supermarket packages, even school lunches. The industry called it safe. Critics called it fraud. For years, Americans fed their children hamburgers without realizing they weren't eating meat, but chemically sanitized waste. Hormones in your burger. A cow in the United States is not raised the way you think on commercials. You see green fields, blue skies, happy cattle grazing. In reality, most beef cattle spend their final months in crowded feedlots, injected with growth hormones to fatten them faster. These hormones, estradiol, testosterone, progesterone, accelerate growth, shaving months off the feeding process. For the industry, time saved equals millions earned. For you, it means every bite of your steak may carry traces of synthetic hormones. The European Union banned hormone-treated beef in 1989, citing cancer risks and endocrine disruption. The United States fought that ban at the World Trade Organization, insisting the beef was safe. Safe according to whose definition? The regulators influenced by billion-dollar lobbying groups, or the independent scientists warning of long-term dangers? The chicken wash at Sunday dinner. You roasted chicken, golden and crisp, the kitchen smells warm and comforting. But before that bird ever reached your oven, it was dipped in something you'd never pour over your table, chlorine baths. In massive slaughterhouses, chickens are dunked in chlorinated water to kill bacteria like salmonella. The process makes the meat clean on paper. In reality, it masks filthy conditions. Birds crammed together, standing in their own waste, covered in feces. Other countries rejected this practice outright. The European Union banned chlorine-washed chicken, not because the chemical itself was lethal, but because it allowed producers to cut corners on hygiene, making contamination more likely. In America, it's still the norm. The invisible epidemic. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that 48 million Americans get sick from foodborne illnesses every year. Many of those outbreaks trace back to meat, ground beef laced with E. coli, chicken tainted with salmonella, pork contaminated with listeria. The recalls make headlines. Tons of beef pulled from shelves, millions of pounds of chicken destroyed. But here's the quiet truth. Most of the contaminated meat is already eaten. Before the recall is even announced, people end up in hospitals with kidney failure, lifelong complications, or worse. The industry shrugs, issues a press release, and moves on, and the cycle repeats. The slaughterhouse reality. If you think the danger ends with bacteria or hormones, think again. Step inside a slaughterhouse. Workers, often immigrants, paid low wages, stand shoulder to shoulder, knives flashing, carcasses moving down conveyor belts at lightning speed. The pressure to keep lines moving leads to mistakes. Contamination spreads when feces or bile rupture during processing. Blood, waste, and meat mingle. Workers themselves are often injured, cut, or infected, then replaced without question. It's not just a food system, it's a machine, fast, relentless, indifferent to both human and animal suffering. The hidden cost. Why does this system survive? Because it's profitable. Pink slime reduces waste. Costs, turning scraps into profit. Hormones make cows bigger, faster, more beef, more money. Chlorine baths cut corners, letting producers run dirtier facilities without consequence. High-speed slaughter lines maximize output, even if contamination slips through for decades. Meat lobbyists have poured millions into Washington to keep regulations weak, labeling requirements vague, and consumer awareness low. What Americans don't know is what keeps the industry alive. The dinner table illusion. Picture another family scene. A father flips burgers on the grill. The kids cheer, waiting with buns in hand. He feels proud he's feeding his family, providing comfort and tradition. But under the surface of that burger lies a chain of secrets: ammonia baths, synthetic hormones, chlorine dips, bacteria outbreaks, slaughterhouse shortcuts. A perfect illusion, wrapped in marketing, sold as 100% pure beef. The father doesn't know. The children don't know. Most Americans don't want to know. And that ignorance is the meat industry's most valuable product. The question no one asks, so here is a question. If this is what the industry allows to be seen: the pink slime scandal, the chlorine chicken, the recalls, what horrors remain hidden? The meat you eat is not just protein. It's a story of chemicals, shortcuts, and systemic deception, a story that leaves you with the illusion of safety, while quietly eroding the foundation of trust in food itself. And the next time you bite into a burger, you might wonder, is this really meat? Or is it something else entirely? Part 3. The sweet poison in your daily drinks. A vending machine hums in the corner of a high school hallway. Students crowd around it, punching buttons, waiting for the familiar clunk of a can. A bright truck Coca-Cola logo stares back at them, smiles, fizz, a moment of happiness. But that happiness comes at a price. Hidden in every gulp is a substance that reshaped America's health, rewired its appetite, and left behind a legacy of obesity, diabetes, and disease. It wasn't an accident, it was engineered, and it was sold as sweetness: the corn syrup switchin'. The late 1970s, American soda companies faced a problem: sugar prices were climbing. The solution wasn't to use less, it was to use something cheaper, sweeter, and far more dangerous. Enter high fructose corn syrup, HFCS, a liquid sugar substitute made from genetically modified corn. It was cheaper than cane sugar, easier to transport, and crucially more addictive. By the 1980s, Coca-Cola and Pepsi had quietly replaced real sugar with HFCS in almost every bottle. To the consumer, nothing seemed different. The sweetness was the same, but inside the body, HFCS behaved differently. It overwhelmed the liver, spiked blood sugar, and converted more quickly into fat. It didn't just satisfy hunger, it rewired it, driving cravings and fueling a health crisis that still hasn't slowed: the obesity explosion. Look at the numbers. In 1960, the obesity rate in America was around 13%. By 2023, it was over 42%. Diabetes diagnoses followed the same path. Was it coincidence? Or was it by design? Soda became liquid candy, each can packing 10 teaspoons of sugar. Energy drinks, marketed as fuel, contained even more. Sports drinks, flavored waters, bottled teas, all loaded with hidden sweeteners. Even healthy products like smoothies and yogurts carried massive doses of added sugar, disguised as natural. The average American now consumes nearly 57 pounds of added sugar each year, much of it in liquid form. Every sip is easy, unnoticed, but the effect is cumulative, corrosive, and devastating. The sugar industry cover-up. The real scandal isn't just the sweetness, it's the lies. In the 1960s, as scientists began linking sugar to heart disease, the Sugar Research Foundation launched a counterattack. They secretly paid Harvard researchers to publish studies shifting blame to fat instead. Sugar is harmless, they claimed. Fat is the enemy. Decades of food policy follow that script: low-fat yogurts flooded shelves loaded with sugar to mask the taste. Snack companies replaced fat with sweeteners. Americans thought they were eating healthier, when in reality, they were consuming more sugar than ever before. The deception worked. Heart disease climbed, obesity soared, and the sugar industry counted its billions. The addiction. Nobody talks about sugar. It doesn't just taste good, it hijacks the brain. Neurologists discovered that sugar triggers the same dopamine pathways as cocaine. The high is brief, the crash is harsh, and the craving comes roaring back. Food scientists took note and designed drinks to maximize that cycle. Coca-Cola once bragged its formula contained the perfect blend of sugar, acid, and fizz to keep people coming back. They weren't exaggerating. Studies show that sugary drinks light up the brain's reward centers more intensely than many drugs. The result, a generation hooked not on soda, but on a chemical dependency sold as refreshment. The silent damage. The damage is not instant, it builds silently year after year. Fatty liver disease, once rare, now common even in children. Type 2 diabetes, a lifelong condition linked directly to sugar intake. Tooth decay, dentists call soda liquid acid. Heart disease fueled not just by fat, but by decades of sweet deception. And yet the industry's marketing plays on innocence. Polar bears drinking Coke, athletes chugging sports drinks, children smiling in commercials. The packaging hides the poison, the branding hides the blood. The illusion of choice. Walk down any American grocery aisle. Look closely. The illusion of variety is everywhere. Energy drinks, iced teas, juices, flavored waters. Different colors, different names, different promises. But inside, it's the same: sugar, or it's chemical. Cousins: HFCS, sucrose, glucose syrup, evaporated cane juice. Different labels, same addiction. Even when people think they've escaped choosing diet sodas, they step into another trap. Artificial sweeteners linked to gut disruption, metabolic problems, and still, ironically, weight gain. There is no escape, only illusion. The family at the table picture this. A father cracks open a can of soda after work. His son reaches for an energy drink. Homework scattered across the table. His daughter sips a bottle of tea she bought at school. The family thinks they're unwinding, hydrating, enjoying a treat. They don't realize they're consuming sugar levels that once would have been unthinkable, not in cake, not in candy, but in liquid form, absorbed faster, hitting harder, damaging deeper. By the time they notice the consequences: weight gain, fatigue, blood sugar swings, it's too late. The addiction is already wired into their brains. The bitter question. So here's the bitter question. If sugar is the new tobacco, then who is the new cigarette industry? It's not one company, it's all of them: the soda giants, the energy drink startups, the juice brands that whisper natural while pouring sugar into every bottle. You're not drinking for refreshment, you're drinking for profit, their profit. And every time you open a can, you're not just taking a sip, you're taking the bait. The real poison isn't the sweetness itself, it's the belief that sweetness ever came without a cost. Part 4. Processed foods that rewire your brain. A child tears open a bag of Cheetos. The fluorescent orange dust coats his fingers, his lips, the couch. He licks them clean, smiling, reaching for more. It looks harmless, just a snack, just cheese puffs. But inside that bag is more than food. It's engineering. It's science designed not to feed you, but to hook you. Welcome to the world of ultra-processed foods, where flavor isn't discovered, it's manufactured. Where hunger isn't satisfied, it's exploited. And where the line between eating and addiction is deliberately erased. The Bliss Point Blueprint. In the 1980s, food scientists began searching for the perfect formula, the exact combination of sugar, salt, and fat that would light up the brain's reward system. They called it the Bliss Point. Not too sweet, not too salty, not too fatty, just enough of each to make the brain crave more. It wasn't cooking, it was programming. Chips, cookies, sodas, frozen dinners, each one is calibrated to hit that bliss point. Your taste bud sends signals of pleasure, your brain releases dopamine, and then, before the pleasure fades, you reach for another bite, not because you're hungry, but because the system was designed that way. The Doritos effect. Take the humble tortilla chip. Simple, right? Corn, oil, salt. But Doritos aren't simple. They are engineered chaos. Each chip delivers an explosion of flavor, layering cheese, garlic, onion, tomato, MSG flavors that hit multiple parts of the palate at once. Then, mysteriously, the aftertaste vanishes. Scientists call this vanishing caloric density. Your brain expects satiety, it never comes. So you keep eating. One chip becomes 10, 10 becomes a whole bag. It isn't an accident, it's design. The secret of the golden fry. Fast food fries aren't just potatoes, they're a chemical symphony. First, the potatoes are coated with sugar to help them brown evenly and deliver a subtle sweet note that enhances a salty crunch. Then, they're fried in oil engineered for maximum mouthfeel. Finally, they redusted with additives to keep them tasting fresh long after they've cooled. When you bite into a fry, the crunch, the salt, the slight sweetness, they all trigger a dopamine hit. It feels satisfying, but it doesn't last. You reach for another, and before you realize, the box is empty. MSG and the excitotoxin trap for decades. MSG, monosodium glutamate, has been a hidden weapon in processed foods. It enhances savory flavors, makes cheap ingredients taste expensive, and overstimulates brain receptors. Scientists call it an excitotoxin, a substance that can overexcite brain cells to the point of damage. Studies link excessive MSG to headaches, migraines, and even neurodegenerative risks. The food industry calls it umami. They slip it into soups, chips, frozen meals. Sometimes they hide it under names like hydrolyzed protein or yeast extract. You think you're eating chicken broth, you're eating chemical trickery. The addict's brain. Neuroscientists have scanned the brains of people eating ultra-processed foods. The images are chilling. The same reward centers light up as when addicts use drugs. Dopamine floods, pleasure spikes, then it crashes, leaving behind craving. The brain begins to rewire itself, reducing natural satiety signals, increasing compulsion. Over time, the body doesn't just want processed food, It needs it. This is why you can crave pizza at midnight. Why you can't stop after one cookie. Why a drive past a golden-arched fast food sign triggers hunger even if you've just eaten. Your brain isn't hungry, it's conditioned. The scientists who regret some of the very architects of this system now live with regret. Former food executives have admitted, on record, that their companies knowingly engineered foods for addiction. They compared it to tobacco. They admitted internal documents prove the intent. But nothing changed because addiction sells and in food and like drugs. Addiction is not only legal, it's celebrated. Bright commercials, family-friendly mascots, Super Bowl ads, addiction disguised as joy. The illusion of choice. Walk through a supermarket, it feels like freedom, rows of options, endless variety. But look closer. The chips are different flavors, the cereals have different mascots. The frozen pizzas boast different toppings. But inside, the formulas repeat: sugar, salt, fat, MSG. Artificial flavors. The illusion of choice is one of the industry's greatest weapons. You think you're deciding. In reality, you're picking different packaging for the same addictive blueprint. The family at the couch. A family gathers on the couch for movie night. A bowl of popcorn sits in the middle, butter-flavored topping dripping. A bag of chips passes from hand to hand. A soda fizzes on the table. Laughter fills the room. The movie plays. It feels like bonding, comfort, normalcy. But under the laughter, their brains are being hijacked, their dopamine is spiking. Their cravings reinforced, their satiety signals dulled. They think they're feeding hunger. In reality, they're feeding a system designed to keep them hooked. The final question. So here's the question no one dares to ask. When you eat ultra-processed food, are you choosing? Or are you obeying? Because every crunch, every fizz, every bite has been built not for nourishment, but for control. Your brain isn't broken, it's hacked, and the hackers wear lab coats. The real horror isn't that processed foods are unhealthy. The real horror is that they were engineered to make you love them until you can't live without them. Part 5. The Silent Invasion. Plastic and poison in every bite. It's late evening. A mother reheats leftovers in a plastic container. The microwave hums, the plastic fogs. A faint chemical smell lingers in the air. She stirs the food, sets it on the table, and calls her family to dinner. They eat, they laugh. They don't notice that along with the pasta, they're swallowing something else, something invisible, because in America, food isn't just food anymore, it's plastic. It's chemicals. It's poison slipping silently into every bite. The plastic you can't see every week. The average American unknowingly consumes the equivalent of a credit card's worth of microplastics. It comes from bottled water, food packaging, and even the air. Studies have found plastic fragments in seafood, salt, honey, and beer. More recently, scientists detected them in human bloodstreams. And even in the placenta of unborn babies. The invasion isn't coming, it's already here. Each microplastic carries not just its own risks, but also toxic hitchhikers, pesticides, heavy metals, industrial chemicals. They ride along, entering the body through something as innocent as a glass of water. The BPA problem for decades. Americans stored food and drinks in plastic containers lined with BPA bisphenol A. This chemical makes plastic tough and clear, but it also mimics estrogen inside the body, disrupting hormones, damaging fertility, and increasing cancer risk. The FDA insists that BPA levels in food packaging are safe, yet multiple studies show links to obesity, reproductive disorders, and developmental problems in children. Many countries have banned BPA in baby bottles. In the US, it's still in countless cans, bottles, and storage containers. Every sip of canned soda, every spoonful of canned soup, a dose of synthetic hormones, dripping into your body. The forever chemicals of plastic is one enemy, PFAS or another, known as forever chemicals. PFAS are used in fast food wrappers, microwave popcorn bags, non-stick pans, and even pizza boxes. Why? Because they repel grease and water, keeping food from soaking through. Convenient, efficient, deadly. PFAS don't break down in the environment or in the human body. They accumulate in blood, organs, and tissue linked to infertility, immune dysfunction, thyroid disease, and certain cancers. They live up to their nickname. Once inside you, they never leave. That crispy French fry in its paper sleeve, that slice of pizza in its box. They're not just calories, they're a chemical inheritance you can't escape. The bottled water illusion. Millions of Americans drink bottled water believing it's safer, cleaner, purer. But recent studies revealed that bottled water contains up to 100 times more microplastics than tap water. The irony is brutal. Consumers pay extra for purity, only to swallow invisible fragments of the very bottles holding the liquid. Each sip isn't refreshment, it's plastic disguised as hydration. The silent toxins of packaging. It's not just what you eat, it's what your food touches. Phthalates, used to soften plastic, leach into cheese, meat, and bread wrapped in cling film. They interfere with testosterone, lowering sperm counts and harming reproductive health. Styrene, used in foam cups and takeout containers, is classified as a possible carcinogen. Heat food in it, and the chemical seeps straight into your meal. PVC polyvinyl chloride, used in plastic wrap, releases toxins when heated, yet people use it to cover dishes and microwaves daily. The contamination is invisible. The risks are lifelong. The family at the table. A family gathers for dinner. Plastic containers line the table. Bottled water sweats in the heat. Takeout sits in grease-resistant wrappers. It looks normal. It feels safe. But every bite is laced with invisible invaders. Microplastics, hormone disruptors, forever chemicals seeping in silently, reshaping their bodies in ways they cannot feel or see. The father's fatigue, the mother's migraines, the child's allergies. No one connects the dots. No one suspects the packaging because the enemy doesn't taste bitter. It doesn't smell foul. It doesn't announce itself. It hides, waiting, the cost of convenience. Why does America tolerate this silent invasion? Because convenience wins. Plastic makes food cheap to store, easy to transport, fast to serve. PFAS keep your burger wrapper clean. BPA makes cans shiny and durable. Bottled water sells the illusion of safety. And so the industry profits, billions made from materials that poison slowly, invisibly, silently. The consumer pays the cost not in dollars, but in years shaved off their health. The final question. So here's the final question. If plastic is now in our blood, our brains, even our unborn children, what does the future of eating look like? Because this isn't contamination anymore. This is transformation. Food and plastic are merging into one. The silent invasion is complete. And every meal, every drink, every bite is another step toward a world where eating is no longer nourishment, it's self-destructs. The real horror isn't that we eat plastic. The real horror is that we don't even notice anymore. So now you know. The food on your table isn't just food. It's chemicals banned elsewhere. Meat washed in ammonia. Sugar sold as happiness. Snacks engineered for addiction. Plastics and poisons seeping into every meal. The system was never built to keep you healthy. It was built to keep you consuming. And as long as you don't question it, the cycle continues. But here's the choice. You can close this page, go back to eating in ignorance. Or you can share this truth, demand transparency, and refuse to play the industry's game. Because the real horror isn't that food is killing us slowly. The real horror is how few people are willing to face it. If you believe others deserve to know, share this. If you want more uncovered truths, subscribe. If you're ready to fight back, start with knowledge. And never stop asking what's really on your plate. The corporations want silence. But silence is what keeps them powerful.